Okay. Well, I think the background to this book goes back a long way, probably all the way to my childhood and my father, who loved the idea of travel, though he never actually went anywhere very much, but he read a lot of travel books and sort of seeded the idea that travelling was an exciting and interesting thing. And so when I started to work, I looked for jobs where I could travel with my profession, and I did that a fair bit. But I always had at the back of my mind certain trips I wanted to do, and when I reached the age of 55, I decided if I don't do something about these trips, I'll never make them. So at that time I was working for myself and able to take time off. So I took 3 months off, and I went to South America. I bought a ticket to Lima and a return ticket from Rio, and I made my way between the two cities. I enjoyed it so much I decided it's a formula I could repeat. And from then on, every year, I went somewhere. I made a trip, a similar trip. The book really is not really a book about the best hotel to stay at, the best restaurant, or it's essentially about the journey itself and things that happen to be on the journey, my reaction to the various things, the various countries and sites I see, the people. So it's essentially that, as the title suggests. It's about exploring the possibilities of a journey.
This is a Book Potato interview. Today I am with Ray Harris. This is his book, For the Journey. Ray, hello.
Hello there.
Right, For the Journey, a collection of travel notes from trips made over the last 20 years. What's the book about, other than obviously travelling?
Well, each journey, I suppose it's a journey I had at the back of my mind most of my adult life, but never had the opportunity to make. And so basically what I've done in each case is think of a start point and think of an end point. And then I've left what happens in between those two as more fairly vague, and explored the possibilities that might arise as I carried out the journey. Though each journey there were certain things I wanted to see. The first journey I made was to South America, and I specifically wanted to see Machu Picchu, Lake Titicaca, and the Iguazu Falls, and I built a journey around that. And I also wanted to make the train ride. There's a train ride from Lima up to Hayankau, which in those days was the highest train in the world, highest normal gauge train. Unfortunately, as it turned out, I wasn't able to make that train journey on my first trip, but I eventually got around to doing it in one of the later trips.
I mean, these are quite exotic destinations. These aren't the sort of normal holiday or trip or backpacking thing. People go to Australia or Thailand or something. These are a little bit off the beaten track, certainly for 20 years ago and for today.
Yes, I suppose so. I mean, I travel quite a lot in my work. I mean, I worked overseas in Sierra Leone, in Mexico and in Algeria, and travelled a fair bit as part of my profession when I worked in project management.
Right.
And so, I was used to travelling. I was used to third world countries, if you like. So I wasn't put off by the idea that some of the places I had in mind might be fairly basic sort of places.
Sure.
The next trip I made actually, again, was driven really by my desire to go to Manaus. I've always been fascinated by Manaus, this city that was once the richest city in South America, locked in the middle of the rainforest, and then impoverished by the British, who ruined the rubber trade and moved it to Malaya. And there's this fabulous opera house there, and I just wanted to see it, and so I made a trip. Again, I bought a ticket to Caracas, I bought a return ticket from Rio, and I did the rest by buses and boat.
Wow. What's it like travelling on a bus? These would be quite long journeys.
Oh, they were, yeah. Though, I mean, bus travel in Latin America is very common. I mean, there are some very rough country buses, but middle-class people, because flying is quite expensive, most people would use buses for fairly long journeys. And the longest journey I did actually was from Belém to Fortaleza, and that took 33 hours.
33 hours. Wow. And that's without showers. Oh.
And without showers, yes. And but okay, there were stops for food and toilet
Yes.
breaks and that kind
Yeah.
of thing. But no, you couldn't clean yourself
Well,
up. Yeah.
so someone travelling from London to say Edinburgh, that's easy.
Well, yes, that's just.
Wow. And any advice on going on a 36-hour bus journey?
Well, it's strange, really. I mean, fortunately, I don't get travel sick. I mean, if you're liable to get travel sick, it would be a very bad idea. But I was never very good at sleeping on planes or anything. But I sort of over time I did teach myself to sleep on a bus, and so once you crack that and you can actually get some sleep on the bus, it isn't too difficult.
Wow, I'm not sure I'd like to attempt that. That's crazy. So when you got off the bus, what was the first thing you wanted to do in that instance?
Well, you know, it varies, but in Brazil has a sort of system of bus stations, but these bus stations are very rarely actually in the town. They might be on the outskirts of the town, and so you need to get from the bus station to somewhere to stay. So I usually take a guide with me, a rough guide or something like that. And I'd choose a hotel, and initially I'd probably get a taxi to the hotel and book in, but I'd try and find which bus actually got you from the hotel back to the bus station, so that eventually I could, when I got round to leaving, I could get back fairly cheaply to the bus station.
Sure. I mean, and again, these sorts of things. It said you bought a travel guide.
Yeah.
Was it quite useful having a travel guide?
Well, yeah. I mean, the travel guide really was great for hotels in those days. I mean, nowadays you don't need those sort of things so much. I mean, when I went across Russia, I did the whole thing with Booking.com. But I mean, when I started in '99 and in the early 2000s, you know, you didn't have that kind of facility. I mean, even money was a problem. And so I used to carry quite a lot of cash hidden all over my body. But slowly, you know, credit cards got accepted, and there were ATMs and so forth in fairly underdeveloped countries, and so it got easier and easier.
So would you say travelling long distances today is easier than it was 20 years ago?
Oh, much easier. I mean, I went to Vietnam in 2005. You could use credit cards all over Southeast Asia, you know, and it's really amazing, quite frankly. And
has that spoilt the experience?
Well, actually, carrying lots of money around is a fairly tricky thing to do. I mean, I did actually get mugged in Brazil on one of my trips. Fortunately, I didn't lose my money, but I lost my camera and my watch. So I think in many ways it's made it slightly safer. The fact you can get money in most towns now. It has made it easier. There's no two ways about it. And even ringing home. I mean, the first time I went, you know, I didn't call home on a mobile phone. I used to go into these. In those days, Latin America had phone shops you could go into. All that's changed. It has changed dramatically over the last 20 years. Sure. I must admit.
Do you think it takes away some of the charm of some of these places? So it all becomes kind of the samey, or is it still? I
suppose it's much easier now, and I suppose that in a way it's not quite so heroic as it was getting to some of these places. That maybe takes some of the charm away.
Sure. But
as I've got older, I no longer want to be a hero. So it's,
that's true. Are you still going on?
Yeah. I'm planning to go to the Baltic actually with my friend Jeff, who you met upstairs, and we're going in October we'll visit most of the Baltic. The Balkan countries.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, so colder.
Yeah. I mean, travelling around Europe is dead easy, quite frankly. You know.
Yes.
You can buy a rail pass. That's what we normally do: buy a rail pass, and I think travelling in most countries is pretty straightforward now. It's much easier than when I started, that's true. Sure.
And your preferred carriage of transport, would you say?
I like trains. I like trains very much, yeah. Though one of the most boring trains I was on was actually the train in Australia, which runs from Perth to Adelaide across the, I think it's the Nullarbor Plain. That, unless you're in, it's very, very expensive if you buy a sleeping berth, and I was in a seat. It takes 3 days from Perth to Adelaide. The food's pretty awful, and it's I think it's a trip perhaps only trained fanatics should make. You know?
You have to really like trains to go through that. Yeah, perhaps. Out of all the countries, I mean, how many countries have you been to, would you say?
Well, in this book, I don't know, it's probably about 20 or 25. I mean, in my life, I've been to about 55 different countries. Yeah.
Wow. What's your worst experience?
I suppose the worst experience was getting mugged in Brazil. It put me off being on my own in various parts of dodgy parts of town. It didn't last very long. I mean, I got over it fairly quickly, but when it first happened, you know, I got fairly badly beaten by a couple of lads and my stuff taken. But I got out of it, you know. Nobody used any knives or weapons of any kind, so I got out of it fairly easily, really, looking back on it, and I recovered quite quickly. The other problem I had, I got bitten by a dog in Bolivia, and I had to have the rabies injections. That took a while.
I've heard that's quite a painful experience.
Actually, it wasn't that painful. Yeah. I think in days of old, they used to inject you in the stomach, and it got very, very tenderly. But the Bolivians injected me in my backside, and that was fine.
Okay, so not a problem at all.
Not a problem at
all. What would you say is your best experience? If you think of one particular experience that stands out.
I think I wouldn't say one, but when you stand above Machu Picchu, or when you stand above the Terracotta Army, or if you wander around the temples of Angkor Wat, you think these are fantastic sights, and you know, and not to have lived to see them firsthand is a great pity. You know, they are wonderful. When you look down on these things, you feel sort of privileged, really. These are some of the best sights, best things you can see on Earth. You know, and
you don't think Google Maps does it justice? And looking at it remotely.
I mean, Google Maps is very useful. I mean, I use it quite a lot. Find my way around London, but no, I think there's something about being there. There's actually being there that makes a difference. Yeah.
Sure.
And especially if you know, it's been quite a significant journey to get there. You know.
Again, it's the journey rather than the destination.
I mean, when I went to Angkor Wat, I started in Singapore and I went right up through Malaysia and Thailand, and then I went into Laos, and went through Laos, came down to Laos on the Mekong, on a boat down the Mekong.
Oh wow!
Yeah, and so it was quite a trip to eventually get to Cambodia, and so you know, you feel as if you've you know, achieved quite a bit to actually get there. And then when you see, I mean, you can more or less fly straight into Siem Reap now and see these, and there are quite a lot of tourists in Angkor Wat now, but it is still an amazing sight.
Is there any place where you haven't been that you really feel that you want to see?
The one thing I've always wanted to do and never got around to is I wanted to go up the Irrawaddy to Mandalay, you know, get a trip from what used to be called Rangoon up the Irrawaddy. That's about the only thing I've really wanted to do that I haven't done, and I've not done much in Africa, to be honest. Partly I think because I lived there for a while in West Africa, and when I was in West Africa I was based in Sierra Leone, and I went to Ivory Coast, and I went to Nigeria. So I would quite like to see Victoria Falls, and so I have it in mind to do that.
Sure, I mean, again, that's not a bad collection of places where you have been. Any advice for people perhaps watching this who've not travelled as extensive as you have, but just started going off slightly the beaten track? Any preparation they need to do, or is it mindset, or is it just to be inquisitive and find adventure?
Well, I think you need to, I mean, I used to have a packing list and all that sort of thing, but again, most of these things have got so much easier now. You can get most things, but I mean, you need to sort of do a bit of research on what sort of things are available where you're going and what you think you need. Also, you know, you need to think about what sort of drugs you might need. In some cases, you still need yellow fever injections, or you might need to take anti-malaria tablets with you. You need to go through all that. I mean, when I had my rabies injections, having gone through, there was 8 injections. I mean, I used to top those up every year. I've stopped doing it now, but it seemed, having gone through that, it seemed a good idea to keep it up to date.
Sure, that makes sense. That makes sense. In the compiling of the book, how long did it take for you to put this together? Obviously, these are from your journeys over the last 20 years, but actually deciding, right, we're going to put this into a book. How long did that take? And
it took a long time. I kept notes of all the trips as I went, and in some cases, the first trip, which is perhaps the longest trip, when I got back, I did write up quite a lot of the notes, but the other trips I didn't write the notes up. And so when I finally, I was inspired by Jeff, actually, my friend, who'd written this book on his journey around the UK to visit the weather stations. And so I decided that my grandchild, I've got 4 grandchildren, I was quite interested that they one day should know what I've done. I mean, they're not particularly interested now, and they probably won't be interested for quite a long time, but sure. It did seem to be quite a nice idea to leave them something that they could think, my granddad did that. So I decided about, I suppose about 18 months ago, to start trying to make a book of it, and it took over a year to write it all up. And I had quite a bit of difficulty with the maps, strangely, because it's quite difficult to get hold of uncopyrighted maps.
Right.
And you know, and I wanted to just put the cities I visited on a map, you know, so that people have got some rough idea how the trip went. And that took me a long time to sort that out. And then I went to one of these printing services, online printing services. You know, you produce a PDF file and send it to them, and they come back with a book.
Sure. And I suppose a book like this, which is it's not a fiction book, it's not a story, it's about your stories, your experience. Have you found that a difficult experience getting people interested, or are people interested in reading this?
I mean, I've circulated it to most of my friends, and I mean, they're my friends, so I've had some really fairly positive comments from them. Sure. So I really haven't had any independent reviews, so I've no idea really.
Sure.
Some people have been very kind. Nobody's been unkind, but they're my friends.
Yeah. No. Well, I'm sure we can get some reviews back for this, because this is available in the BookPotato shop and online. So his last question, again, any advice to someone who's trying to compile a book, maybe a non-fiction book? Any sort of mistakes that you wish you could have avoided or nearly made?
I think you've got to get somebody else to read it. I mean, you can't believe in your own. My wife has been very good at sort of editing it for me, to be honest. I mean, when you do something on your own, you're in danger of being your own judge. That's very dangerous, I think.
Yes.
And so you need to, and of course, you need to avoid gimmicks and cheap jokes and all that sort of thing, which may seem funny at the time, but
yeah.
So getting a second or even a third opinion before you actually print it is a very good idea, really. Yeah.
Sure.
But I think go for it. But my advice to anybody who wants to do it.
It's easier than it ever was before to print your own book. So, Ray, thank you very much.
Well, thank you. Thank you for taking the book.